Hello, everybody. How are you today? We are broadcasting live from Miami. Today is Wednesday, May 13 of 2020. Today, we're going to speak about three articles. We're going to explore them. One of them speaks about the Latin American makers scrambling to stem losses as brands scrap orders. The other one is the art of the crisis pivot and the brands that are getting it right. And our last article will be Zara's billionaire owner was praised for helping in the coronavirus crisis. Workers in Myanmar are paying the price. So to give a little bit of a background, we're going to start with the first article speaking about how in Latin America they're struggling with canceled orders. We spoke about this in length in the past few episodes because in Bangladesh the crisis is very big. We know that they have the textile industry there is very big. Of course, they're taking a hit with all these canceled orders, not only in Bangladesh but also in many countries in Asia. And now we're going to explore Latin America. So the textile industry constitutes one of the oldest productive activities in Latin America. Even before the colonization, the pre-Hispanic textile, and during the pre-Hispanic times, the textile production was very, very important, and it continued to be during the colonial rule. And throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, the importance of the sector did not decrease. During the stage of the industrial growth that was induced by exports, the textile branch led the sectoral growth in Brazil and Mexico, which are the two of the largest economies in the region. So, we're going to speak about Latin America and the brands that are the brands that are canceling, right? And how in different countries this situation is affected, because on the surface it would look like the crisis is kind of similar, or the actions taken by brands and factories is kind of similar, but each country has a different way of handling this, and of course each country has a different economy and different circumstances, so this situation is very complex and very different from country to country. So, as Latin American textile and apparel makers are struggling because US and the European fashion brands are canceling or postpone orders due to the coronavirus, the industry is slowing down all over the world. So, the vice president of the Mexico-based Cavalier Fashion Group, Eric Levy, said that they are in a critical situation. This group produces jackets, luxury items, and they're also, they import from brands and they distribute important brands in Mexico of other luxury brands. So this supplier, the the Cavalier Fashion Group, they bring their products to Liverpool, El Palacio de Hierro, and Sears in Mexico, which are probably some of the biggest stores, department stores that sell in Mexico. But right now, obviously, as we all know, they are not open, so they're taking, they're throwing the firm into a cash squeeze because there are no sales. We know all this story. He says that they have lost around 2.5 million in revenues for part of March and all of April. And the situation in Mexico is peculiar because they're asking, these companies are asking the government for deferment of tax payments, but in Mexico it's almost legendary that, it's not a good practice, but it's almost legendary that industries don't pay taxes. So there's a little bit of a situation there because the government is not exempting or giving them more time. Also, remember, taxes are paid after sales, so if there are not sales made right now, there are no taxes to be paid. So it's a little bit of a complex situation. If you have something that we can explore deeper, please share with me so we can talk about it in a next broadcast. Also, he says that the industry is operating at a 20%, and they don't see how they can last longer because they're paying salaries to their workers even if they are at home. Also, I think that it's different from how things are from in comparison to the United States. For example, is if an employer fires their employees in Mexico, the employees are entitled to protection from, and it states that there are laws that protect these employees, and those laws say that they have to be paid vacation or you know, it's a whole like it's 10 types of recovery payments that the employers have to take care of. So in a situation like this, the biggest problem for everybody is the cash flow. So if they fire all of these employees, they have to cover for all of these expenses, and you know, they don't have cash for that. So in Mexico, the situation is also peculiar because there's a lot of contraband and piratery. I don't know how to say it in English. It's when you create fake, for example, Louis Vuitton bags, but are not Louis Vuitton. So there's a lot of that type of market in Mexico, and also contraband. The contraband means that they buy for example, a company with 2 employees buys crazy amounts of denim from outside as contraband. They don't pay taxes for them. They don't employ people. It's a 2-people company. So this forces the industry in Mexico, you know, to not hire as many employees as it could hire if this denim or all these textiles were produced in Mexico. So this makes the industry even more weak in times like this, because all of these jobs could be in Mexico instead of being on the other side of the world. They're bringing textiles that are not of good quality. They're bringing products that are like, well, you know, we all know that made in China stuff that are fake. So this is a big issue in Mexico, and when a crisis hits like this, well, this is even bigger because a lot of employment cannot be done because of this situation. Some brands have offered to pay. As I said, in each country they're managing situations different. So we have that in Mexico, the Canaíbe, which is they lobby for the garment workers and the whole industry. They say they're in a very precarious situation, and they're asking the government to change a few laws in order to help them to survive, right? I found that very interesting as I read all these articles and explored the different angles of how this situation is being handled, that all of these changes and all of these things that are happening in all over the world, you know, how from the top of the companies, all of these changes, right? All of this is tackled in such a different way in every country that I had the opportunity to explore. So in Mexico, for example, they are operating, some of these companies, they're operating at 20% because they also are employing people for to do, you know, the PPE things that are most needed right now. So we're gonna talk a little bit. Well, The formal industry in Mexico employs around 300,000 workers, and the informal employs around 1 million. So, in this informal employment is where all the contraband and all these illegal practices fit. So, this is so harmful for the industry because nothing can be traced, nothing can be put, into law, nothing can be really assessed and managed in a way that they can receive any help, in a way that they can really tackle a situation from a legal perspective, right? So Mexico is it's the country that most imports to the United States. Brazil also. So this is to see that how important it is the textile industry in so many countries, right? Mexico and Brazil are one of the two strongest economies, and because Mexico exports so much so much to other countries, especially the United States, they're in a super avid. This means that they send more than what they need to come into the country. So another area is Central America. They are suffering because a lot of orders have been canceled, and some purveyors, for example, that bring stuff to Under Armour, Nike, or Lululemon, they have closed. So some of them are operating only with just one shift, but in countries like Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, and Honduras, they completely shut the whole industry. So in Guatemala, it says that they have lost already 400 million in contracts. This is about 1.6 billion totally, in a complete year. So this is already been very hard for them, and probably will be even harder because we don't know when this is gonna end, right? This is changing, and this has not been the same, so it's hard to know. This has not been the same in the entire world, so it's really hard to know when things are gonna be back to a different normal, because we're not gonna go necessarily back to normal, but a different normal. And let's remember that all of these factories, they create garments for the United States, for example. That's one of the biggest buyers. And the United States is right now, struggling to come back to whatever normal that means. In Guatemala, this sector is the main sector, the exporter. That's the biggest exporter they do from the textile industry. They employ 280 companies. Obviously, this means they have a very, very strong working force, right? So, in Colombia, for example, Grupo Cristal, which provides to Chico, Zumba, and Michael Kors, they say they have 2 or 3 months of clothes that probably won't sell, but they're in a different position. This specific group says that they have cash flow to keep their employees and the company alive while all of this passes. So at least this specific Grupo Cristal in Medellin, Colombia, are in a little bit of a better position. In Brazil, Fernando Pimentel, which is the president of ABIT, it's the Brazilian Association of the Textile Industry, they stopped exporting because the need in Brazil for these articles of main necessity right now, which are the gowns and the masks and everything, their system, they shifted it. So they are producing now these things that are of a main need right now. So they're struggling also, changing their patterns and everything, but they're fixing they're shifting their system, their way. Okay, so they in Brazil, this is a very big industry too. They are self-sustainable in cotton, right? They produce their cotton. They do industrialize whatever they need. The industry is very important also in Brazil because they have huge factories. The size of their factories are remarkable. So, and they employ 1.5 million workers, and they make around 48.3 billion in US dollars as an income annually. There are different ways things are being handled. It says that in Paraguay, the industry, which is also one of the most important, the exporting of textiles, it's been hit because also clients in Brazil have stopped to make these commitments, to finalize these commitments. So countries like Uruguay, Chile, and Bolivia also stopped their give me one second. They also stopped paying, making cancellations and all these things. So one of the things that the companies are handling, for example, one of the ways companies are handling is that they're asking for deferral of payments. Instead of a 30-day payment, which was the original commitment, they are asking now for 90 days of deferral. In other cases, they are wanting to pay only for the fabric, right? Instead of the whole garment already finished. So, companies, the factories probably don't have much option but to comply to these terms because they need the cash flow, right? Some of the circumstances that happen also in Latin America, especially in Argentina and Brazil, is that the conditions of the workers are very precarious, like we spoke about Bangladesh. But in Bangladesh, the sweatshops, they exist all over the place, okay? Sweatshops where people is scrambled working in precarious sanitary conditions, a lot of hours during the day working, 6 days a week. But in these countries in Latin America, there's also the illegal treat of people. They bring people illegally to work as practically slaves. These people have to pay to their handlers because they brought them into the country to work. There's a lot of child labor, child slavery, and there's also a lot of mafia involved. So on this, we're going to explore a little bit more because the issue is not only happening on the other side of the world, but for some reason, we don't hear much about it here in Latin America. So I think it's important that we explore. And for this broadcast, I tried to find, and it's really not much out there, but a few old articles and videos, but not really much. As we haven't given attention to this as much as we have given to Bangladesh after the Rana Plaza incident that killed more than 1,000 people. A lot of attention was brought to there, but there's not a lot of attention in this to these circumstances in Latin America, and we need to know, we need to find out what's going on. On the other side, we have we're going to explore this article that's called The Art of Crisis Pivot, of the Crisis Pivot and the brands that are getting it right. As I said, it was very interesting to me to see how from management, many companies are shifting, are trying to manage this situation. Some companies are just asking for help. Some other companies are changing their ways into the production. Their production is changing into supply for the medical workers. Some others are coming up with ideas that I think they're very, very creative and relevant. These are smaller companies, of course. So we have, for example, that Leandra Medin, the influencer and founder of Man Repeller, she says that you have to work with what you have. She has a company that sells a lot of products through events like Coachella. We spoke about this a while ago. Obviously, when there's no event, there's no promotion in these events for specific brands, and a lot of influencers do this. They travel to these events, or they travel all over the world to bring these brands into the mainstream. But right now, without travel and without events, companies are having to shift how they manage. So what she has is a lot of subscribers, and what she's doing is, instead of putting pictures of events that are not happening, she's sending texts. Her employees are sending texts to their clients, like with the purpose of strengthening their community and also to keep them close and to keep them updated. And she has a lot of response from her subscribers. So at some point, she's thinking on monetize that, probably bringing sponsors of those texts. So she's shifting, she's pampering, let's say, her community, and she plans to monetize on this. Another example of how companies are shifting says that you have to find what sells. So Jonathan Cohen, a New York-based fashion designer, which used to sell dresses for around $1,500. Of course, he's not selling dresses anymore, but right now he's selling flower illustrations, which of course are not as profitable as his dresses, but in a good day he's selling around 50 illustrations for $30. So that keeps the cash flowing, right? And reminding his clients why they like about his brand, because all these illustrations are very similar to the prints of the dresses that he sells. So it is a time to be creative, but it is a time also to be frugal with money, to be very careful. We cannot spend crazy amounts of money shifting models of business. We have to work with what we have, right? Another example is the publicist Elizabeth Tux. She says, let's become indispensable, okay? She has a company that makes press releases for her clients. This is information that she puts out in media outlets about her clients, but right now that's not getting a lot of track. So she created a website where she's selling her clients' products to help them make money, because that's what we all need in this time. And also she gets a commission. So she's helping them stay relevant, make money, and also she's making money through this e-commerce website. Another shift, let's say, it says that we have to stay on brand. What I said about the Cohen's illustrations, that's what it means to stay in brand, because you cannot shift completely your system, putting in danger your brand, right? Diluting your brand. We have to stay true to who we are, obviously connecting to whatever is going to work right now, because everything is so different and everything shifted so much that we have to change, but we have to be careful not to dilute the brand, because the brand is the most important thing. That's why we have people that follow us. That's why we have people buying our products, going to our places, etc. So to stay on brand is very, very important. Another aspect, it says that anything can pivot. So a pivot doesn't need to involve new products. Some brands are using the pandemic to reduce their reliance on wholesale. The wholesale model has been challenged for years, and more brands are leaning into the direct-to-consumer approach. For example, many brands have refused to sell in Amazon because probably it's not their type of client, but right now that you cannot go into a store and buy stuff, well, these products have to be sold somewhere, so they're looking into different marketplaces like Amazon to sell their stuff. Other people are finding Instagram Live to be very productive for them, and they keep selling their products, they keep being the same brand, but they're using, you see, these other tools. I've seen a lot of advertising that's been done in home, like photo shoots that you usually would see in magazines, and the big productions and models and makeup and all of these things. Now they're done in their own homes. Like models are taking pictures of themselves, and this is how they are managing to stay relevant in this crisis. So I found this very interesting. Again, how we have to adapt to this new language, to this new behavior that just months ago was completely different, right? That these habits of consumerism have completely shifted. And also what this specific article says is that we need to think long term. We cannot shift our entire operation for just this period of time, because this period of time specifically is going to change. Eventually this is all going to go away. We're going to go back to a different normal possibly, but we're going to go back to go and shop and do all these things. But we cannot change everything just for this period of time. We have to think that this is going to be over. We have to stay with our brand. We have to consider that things are going to, come back to normal in a certain way. So to be mindful of that. We're going to explore this article from BuzzFeed News about the owner of Zara. He's one of the richest guys in the world. We're talking about Bill Gates level. At some point, he was even more millionaire than Bill Gates, just for a little period of time. So the headline of the article says this: Zara's billionaire owner was praised for helping in the coronavirus crisis. Workers in Myanmar paid the price. So recently, it was the birthday of Zara's owner. And many ambulances came around his house to sing happy birthday. He's loved in Spain because of his philanthropic activities, also because, he brought Zara into the world. So one of the keys of Zara's business model, which made them so successful, is they sell fast fashion. We've spoken about this. Fast fashion is you buy it, the seasons go fast. You find new clothes in a shop very quickly, and you buy the clothes for a very cheap price. So there's plenty of brands that do this, but Zara's specific business model is that when they first started, their supply chain was inside of Spain. It was very, very close, very tight. Instead of having brands clothes produced on the other side of the world, so this made the rhythm much faster. But also a very important detail: they have their products in the store, let's say 2 weeks, and after this product is in 2 weeks at the store, they take it out of the store. Instead In some of the other stores, they reduce the price. They put them on sale, and the articles, the garments, stay in the stores for longer. At Zara, they don't do this. They just have the articles for a short period of time, and then they take it out. So this means that as consumers, we find something that we like, and we buy it at a regular price, because we know, as Zara consumers, that we will not see the article again. So they're playing into the psyche of the consumers, because if you don't get it right now, you're not going to get it. If you, for example, go to Gap or Abercrombie or many of these stores, you know you will come back and you will find these articles at a discounted price, a very, very good discounted price, probably a month later, or you're going to find it in outlets or things like that. At Zara, no, you buy it right now or you don't. So that made the brand really, really successful, right? But once again, we find the other side of the coin. So this article that I explored specifically talks about two factories, two sweatshops in Myanmar. Myanmar is very close to China. They're together. And they were scared because they're so close to it, and people cross the frontier in a daily basis to go to work. So they were worried about the pandemic. So at some point, while the owner of Zara is being celebrated in Spain, at the same time, workers in Myanmar are asking for the owners or managers of these sweatshops or factories to provide them with masks, so they could, protect themselves. They gave them the masks, but they didn't change the masks in a little while. So as we know, even if they don't break, they don't last long. You touch them, you put them on a desk, they don't work anymore as a protective, device. So they asked for all these measures to protect the workers. So the management said, okay, let's think about it. We're gonna come with a solution. So when they come back, they fired everybody. All of these workers, it's important to mention that they they belong to unions, which protect all these workers. So after they asked for more protective equipment, they got fired, all of these people that belong to these unions. So it's a regular practice for these factories that they fire people that belong to unions, and then they hire people that don't belong to unions. Okay, there's a big mafia going on in all these factories, because sometimes they don't even declare that these employees exist. So there's zero accountability for all these workers. No, so. Also, one of the things that happened in Myanmar is that two men that were husbands of women working at one of these two sweatshops, they contracted the virus, and they live in very small dormitories that also they pay half of the salary to the factory that owns these dormitories, right? They work for the same factory that rent to them their dormitories. So these two men got sick because they live all together. Practically everybody knew they were sick. They come to the company and ask, first to protect them with gear, and then to let these two women, the wives of these men, sent back home. And again, fired. While this is all happening as we speak, while the owner of Zara is praised for his philanthropic activity. So I'm gonna send this article to you. It's very it has a lot of details that are very important and are worth to read, because it's just unreal that that there's so much difference that people are living this way like this and working on these conditions to make 1, 2, 3 individuals uber rich when they cannot even have a day off, right? Some of these women, which specifically in Myanmar, 90% of the workforce are women. Some of them work 6 days a week, 11 to 14 hours. When they get out of their jobs, they have to buy groceries, they have to cook, they have to attend to their families. Probably they have 4 or 5 hours in the day to sleep and then start all over again the next day. So it's a little bit too much. It's a little bit too much. We need to be aware of this system of making rich 2, 3 while all of this horrible crisis is going on. Should be unacceptable. Should be. I'm gonna leave you now. Thank you for joining me. We're gonna see each other next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Please take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and stay safe, okay? I'll see you next week. Thank you.